Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this special session as we are privileged to have with us Lieutenant General Khalid Ahmed Kidwai, a key architect of Pakistan's nuclear command and control structure. Before I invite him on the stage, let me introduce our worthy speaker. Lieutenant General Khalid Ahmed Kidwai has led a highly meritorious military service for 56 years. He was awarded the Sword of Honor on the graduation at Pakistan Military Academy, saw frontline combat action in erstwhile Pakistan in 1970 and 71, and was a prisoner of war in India from 1971 to 73. He has held a variety of prestigious command, staff, and instructional appointments, and is a graduate of Pakistan's Command and Staff College, National Defense University, and the U.S. Army Field Artillery School, Fort Sill. After the May 1998 nuclear tests, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai pioneered the establishment of Pakistan's National Command Authority and was appointed as the founding Director General of Strategic Plans Division in December 1998. He served as DG SPD for 15 years. Since 2014, is an advisor to NCA. As DG SPD, he conceived, articulated, and executed Pakistan's nuclear policy and deterrence doctrine comprehensively. He translated these doctrines into a robust nuclear force structure, oversaw and ensured the establishment of Army, Navy, and Air Force strategic force commands, including the development and operationalization of a variety of nuclear weapons. He put in place state-of-the-art command and control systems, as well as an effective nuclear security regime for Pakistan's strategic assets. The resultant policy of full-spectrum deterrence ensures Pakistan's national security, strategic stability, and peace in South Asia. Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai is also the architect of Pakistan's Civilian Nuclear Energy Vision 2050, which will provide Pakistan with 42,000 megawatts of electricity, as well as the National Space Program 2047. All in all, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai built SPD as a critical national institution that has earned national and international respect. In recognition of his devotion to duty, strategic vision, and outstanding leadership of Pakistan's nuclear and space programs, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai has been awarded Pakistan's highest civil award, the Nishan-e-Imtiaz, the second highest civil award, Hilal-e-Imtiaz, in addition to Hilal-e-Imtiaz military. With this, I would now invite our worthy speaker, Lieutenant General Khalid Ahmed Kidwai, to come on the stage and deliver his talk on post-1998 nuclear management in Pakistan, institution building, legislative and policy measures. Sir, please join us on the stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I feel greatly honored to have been invited by the SVI, the Strategic Vision Institute, to speak on a subject that I'm sure will test my recall abilities from nearly a quarter century ago. The topic, as the lady introduced, is post-1998 nuclear management in Pakistan, institution building, legislative and policy measures. I think all Pakistanis understand the importance of 28th May and 30th May 1998 as two historic and critical dates for Pakistan's national security. The nuclear tests conducted by Pakistani scientists and engineers on these two dates represent the firm establishment of a strategic balance in South Asia, which till then had eluded Pakistan. A covert nuclear capability, whose journey had started in 1972, was now announced to the world as an overt nuclear weapons capability, especially for the benefit of our adversary in the East, to register the implications arising out of the restoration of the disturbed strategic balance and the offsetting of the relative conventional asymmetry. Now, when one looks back at the history of Pakistan's nuclear program since the famous Multan meeting of nuclear scientists called by President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1972, 52 years to be exact, one can see a very clear line of separation between two eras of 26 years each. The nuclear program in the pre-30th May 98 era, and then from there on, the nuclear program in the post-30th May 98 era. What was achieved by the celebrated Pakistani scientists and engineers in the pre-30th May 1998 era, 26 years to be exact, and specifically on those two historic days, was the culmination of a heroic and dedicated national scientific and engineering effort, underwritten by a consistently fierce political will, commitment, and national resolve at the government levels, irrespective of the politics of the day, to make Pakistan a nuclear weapons power. Pakistanis may or may not have eaten grass, but the galaxy of Pakistani scientists and engineers, through their successful experiments, demonstrated to the world on those 2 days a Pakistani nuclear weapons capability as it responded in style to the Indian nuclear tests of 11th and 13th May 1998. On the other hand, the post-nuclear test era from May 98 onwards, again 26 years to be exact, for which Allah Almighty chose some of us to carry forward the good work of the scientists. It represents the operationalization, consolidation, strengthening, and the securing of Pakistan's nuclear capability, physically as well as diplomatically, according to the policy of credible minimum deterrence initially, and transiting subsequently to the policy of full spectrum deterrence. Now, today's talk, of course, is about the second era. The story of this second era commences with my posting to the Pakistan Army's General Headquarters on 30th May 98, the day when Pakistan conducted the second series of tests at Chagi. To begin with, I was tasked to develop a proposal for the establishment of a national command control system for Pakistan, now that Pakistan had declared its nuclear weapons capability overtly. My small team and I, which included my old friend and colleague, Dr. Naeem Salik, head of the Strategic Vision Institute now, as one of the pioneers with his expertise in arms control affairs, we put our heads together to complete the assignment to the best of our professional ability. By December 1998, our proposals and recommendations were approved by the then Chief of Army Staff, General Parvez Musharraf. Simultaneously, I was asked to take over as the first Director General of the proposed Strategic Plans Division, the SPD, the proposed Secretariat to the proposed apex body, National Command Authority. Thus began the journey of over 15 years of my association with the nuclear program, the beginning of what I have referred to as the second era from May 98 onwards, and in the process, the pursuit of institution building. Before proceeding further, I would like to present before you the basic outline of the command and control management structure that was approved in 1998. I'm happy to say that despite the journey of 26 years, the fundamentals of the basic management structure in terms of conception have largely remained intact. Of course, like any dynamic organization, there have been improvements, additions, and deletions as SPD went about its operationalization business in the ensuing years. Management structure of Pakistan nuclear capability. First, the command and control organization. In the post-May 1998 period, the establishment of an effective command and control organization from scratch had become a strategic imperative, not only to bring harmony in the command control mechanism, nuclear policy, and development strategy, but also to provide credible stability to our strategic deterrence. Furthermore, its formal announcement was necessary to transmit the right signals at the regional and international level that Pakistan's nuclear capability was being handled in a professional and institutionalized manner under an effective command and control system. This command and control structure, though in place for over a year, was formally announced on 2nd February 2000 and was well received. The command and control organization is structurally grouped under 4 constituents. Constituent 1 is the Apex National Command Authority, the NCA. 2, the Strategic Plans Division, the SPD, constituent 3, the Strategic Force Commands in the field, and constituent 4, the Scientific Strategic Organization. A few words on each one of these. The National Command Authority comprises of 9 important decision makers of the country and includes the political and the military leadership. The chairman of the NCA is the Prime Minister. The NCA, which is the apex decision-making body, formulates policy and controls all aspects of Pakistan's nuclear capability, including deployment and, if ever necessary, the use and the employment of strategic assets. It further has 2 committees, the Employment Control Committee and the Development Control Committee, functioning separately for policy formulation, employment, and development aspects, respectively. In a chart form, it will look something like this. At the apex of the NCA, comprising of the 9 decision makers that I talked about, chairman is the Prime Minister. The NCA is supported by the SPD Secretariat, which has its own internal organization and directorates. There's an Employment Control Committee where the Deputy Chairman is the Foreign Minister. Its members are the Minister for Defense, Interior, Finance, and the 4 service chiefs, the Secretary being the DG SPD. And on the right, you will see the Development Control Committee. The Deputy Chairman is the Chairman Joint Chief Staff Committee. The members are the 3 service chiefs and the heads of scientific strategic organizations, the scientists, Secretary being again the DG SPD. And then directly you will find in the field the 3rd constituent, which is the Services Strategic Force Commands, where the operational control rests with the National Command Authority, and the Army Strategic Force Command, the Naval Strategic Force Command, and the Air Force Strategic Command. These are the 3 forces forming part of the Services Strategic Forces. Their technical training and administrative control generally rests with the respective service, but the operational control is with the National Command Authority. This was the institution that was built. Main functions of the Employment Control Committee: reviews from time to time the latest information on the strategic threat. It is responsible for policy directions during peacetime and has the authority to order, control, and direct the use or the employment of TRIAS services strategic forces during war. It gives policy directions and guidance for evolution of doctrines and employment policy based on technical capability and threat assessment. It lays down guidelines for an effective command and control system to safeguard against accidental or unauthorized use. And on the other hand, the main functions of the Development Control Committee to exercise technical, financial, and administrative control on the scientific strategic organizations, oversee the systematic development of strategic weapons programs as per the approved development strategy. The committee is empowered to raise facilities, organizations, and integrate existing ones within the laid down objectives. And it has full financial and administrative powers while remaining within the allocated budget. The second constituent, number 2, the SPD, as I said, is the Secretariat to the NCA. It is entrusted with the task of developing and managing Pakistan's nuclear and space programs in all dimensions. The SPD functions directly under the Prime Minister and the Chairman Joint Chiefs and is headed by DG SPD. It draws its legal status from the NCA Act 2010. Earlier, it was governed by NCA ordinances. The main functions of SPD: formulation of the country's nuclear policy, nuclear strategy, and nuclear doctrine; formulation of short and long-term development strategy and force goals for TRIAS services strategic forces within the ambit of national power potential, nuclear doctrine, and arms control regimes, besides overseeing its systematic implementation. Formulation of strategic operational plans at the TRIAS services level for movement, deployment, and employment of strategic forces. Formulation of the chain of command and authority, and undertake comprehensive measures for the safety and security of strategic assets. It also assists the Prime Minister and the Chairman Joint Chiefs in exercising control over the scientific strategic organizations and coordinates their financial, technical, developmental, and minimal administrative aspects. It provides military inputs and coordinates with the Foreign Office, the Conference of Disarmament at Geneva, and key ambassadors at Vienna, New York, and Washington on arms control and disarmament affairs or strategic issues which impinge upon the nuclear capability. Coordinates the establishment of a strategic C4I2SR system for the NCA, SPD, and the strategic forces for command and control of strategic capability, ensuring real-time linkages with the conventional services C4I2SR networks. The third constituent, the strategic forces commands at each service level. Exclusive strategic forces commands were raised in all three services and have continued to operate now. The services retained relevant training, technical and administrative control over their respective strategic forces. However, operational planning and employment control rests entirely with the NCA under the overall military direction of the Chairman Joint Chiefs. SPD coordinates all related aspects with the services headquarters. The Army Strategic Force Command, the Naval Strategic Force Command, and the Air Force Strategic Commands have been fully established. And the fourth constituent, the scientific strategic organizations, which constitute and comprise of various commissions and organizations, commonly referred to as the scientific strategic organizations, and these function under the NCSPD and deliver on assigned strategic projects. Now, having given you an overview of the management structures and the institution building during the early years post-1998, I'll give a broad insight into some of the challenges that we faced as we proceeded on a long journey to operationalization and institution building. The first challenge, as we settled down in our new premises in the Chaklala garrison, the newly created SPD started to find its feet, fill in the necessary manpower, and commenced its work in all seriousness with a clear advantage of a confidence that can only come from ignorance. The very first challenge that I would like to mention without any hesitation was that of overcoming our ignorance of matters nuclear, whether strategic, scientific, organizational, operational, or even the locations of the various scientific strategic organizations which are spread far and wide across the country, the important personalities and individuals as to who was who and in which strategic organization. It was a truly mysterious world out there, and the level of secrecy had all along been so high that even asking questions invited hushed answers, sometimes in sign language. The other side, by which I mean the community of scientists and the engineers, was also not quite sure as to how much of the classified information they could share with the new gentleman placed in charge of Pakistan's nuclear program. It took time to educate and familiarize ourselves with the new environments, with people who had just recently emerged as national heroes, the new and unfamiliar scientific jargon, and most important, where stood the program and what needed to be done from here on. One thing was clear, that the newly formed SPD, not even fully manned yet, had hit the ground running. There wasn't much time to waste in getting on with the further development and operationalization phases. Nevertheless, patience, persistence, and good manners helped us in bringing down some of the mental barriers. From there on, we became an accepted part of their team, and the mutual respect, camaraderie, and even friendships developed then exist till today. So first challenge, overcome. Next, developing a vision. The next challenge turned into an opportunity was based on the early identification and conception of midterm and long-term visions as to where we wanted the program to be in a given time frame in harmony with the needs of the policy of credible minimum deterrence. Thereafter, putting heads down for focused work on 7 main segments and a few supporting ones, all moving in parallel because most of the work was interlinked. These 7 segments, when gradually integrated into one wholesome tri-services strategic capability, or a force in being, a term that I learned from my naval friends at the War College, were to be based on the elements of credibility of the capability as well as the minimum numbers of weapons assessed, which in our opinion would radiate the strategic effects of deterrence of aggression on the large military machine of our adversary. And mind you, no staff college or war college prepares one for the challenge of conceiving and developing an operationalized national nuclear capability of a newly declared nuclear power. No ready-made directing staff solutions. All of these had to be based on our best professional judgments and on-job learning. The 7 main segments, each of which was a challenge in itself, were 1. The establishment of an institutionalized nuclear command and control structure. As explained earlier, it comprised of a NCA, the SPD as a one-window secretariat, the 3 tri-services strategic forces in the field to handle the national nuclear capability, and the scientific strategic organizations. This was based on the approval that had been accorded to our initial proposals that had been presented sequentially to the Chief of Army Staff and subsequently to 2 other forums of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, the JCSC, and the National Security Council of the federal government. 2. The conception of a national nuclear policy with a specific vision. It was necessary to identify as to where Pakistan's nuclear capability ought to be for at least a decade beyond the scientific experiments of May 98, say by the year 2010. This was based on the classic military methodology of assessment of the likely geopolitical and strategic environments in the coming decade, the nature of the evolving threat with an eye on strategic developments across the border, and own technical, operational, and financial capabilities and capacities. 3. Based on the foregoing assessments, translation of the national nuclear policy or vision into a robust force development strategy. It involved the raising, equipping, housing, and training of the 3 tri-services strategic forces as the end users of the operationalized capability, as per the then approved policy of credible minimum deterrence. 4. In line with the force development strategy, the tasking to the strategic organizations of the force goals, including oversight. Here was the real-time sweat and hard labor by these strategic organizations to develop and deliver in adequate numbers, in tangible terms, the inventory or the variety of nuclear weapons for the 3 tri-services strategic forces, including weapons earmarked for the first and second strike capability. 5. Conceiving and developing a secure and efficient C4I2 SR capability. This, of course, stands for Command, Control, Communications, Computers, Intelligence, Information, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. The project of conceiving and developing a modern strategic C4I2 SR system was a technical and operational challenge. As you might note, the acronym C4I2 SR comprises of 8 elements, each one of which is a complete system in itself to be conceived, developed, tested, integrated, and then fielded within the length and breadth of the nuclear infrastructure to provide foolproof command control capability to the NCSPD and the strategic forces. 6. The securing of all of the foregoing elements of Pakistan's nuclear capability against external and internal threats. I heard something about nuclear security in the last session. One of the most important elements under the broader rubric of nuclear security was to plan, deploy, and ensure foolproof security for the vast nuclear infrastructure of Pakistan, both civil and military. This was one area where we were very clear that there was no margin for error at all. Pakistan was in a fishbowl, and the world was watching intently. You would recall that due to the worldwide politico-military fallout of 9/11, the US invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, the war on terror and its severe internal fallout inside Pakistan, nuclear security particularly became a top priority area. Under the shadow of the then prevailing adverse geopolitical environments, including the sharp international focus on the safety and security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons and the negative international narrative or mantra of the possibility of Pakistan's nuclear assets falling into wrong hands. Further fueled by hostile adversaries, there was zero margin for error. We realized that in those difficult days, when internal terrorist attacks, including some against Pakistan's conventional military installations, were being conducted with relative impunity, any incident in the domain of the SPD, howsoever big or small, would be just the opportunity that the international media and our adversaries might be waiting for to blow out of proportion and further the purported myth that Pakistan's nuclear weapons were not safe. SPD simply could not afford to assign anything but the highest priority to nuclear security. We therefore invested much time, effort, and funds in ensuring that nuclear security of Pakistan's nuclear infrastructure would be as foolproof as was humanly, professionally, and financially possible. Allah be praised, we came out of that particular difficult phase safe and unscathed. Consequently, it was quite satisfying to learn every once in a while some of the influential international voices which could verify independently through their national technical means, the NTMs, declaring formally that Pakistan's nuclear weapons were in safe hands. For example, just one quote amongst many that I can recall came in David Sanger's book, Confront and Conceal, Obama's Secret Wars and Surprising Use of American Power, where he said, the process has impressed, meaning the nuclear security process, has impressed as to how seriously the Pakistanis take nuclear security, perhaps more seriously than anyone else in the world. Talking of challenges, well, nuclear security was certainly one of the bigger ones. 7, last but not the least, the conduct of nuclear diplomacy. It was vital that the SPD, the Foreign Office, and the relevant Pakistani diplomats, especially those at CD Geneva, Vienna, Washington, and New York, work in concert with the objective of preventing and, where necessary, preempting any adverse fallout of international nuclear diplomacy that might be detrimental to the smooth development of Pakistan's nuclear program and its objectives as per our vision. It was an ongoing challenge that was handled superbly by the Pakistani diplomats year after year, and it continues on and off even now. In the context of nuclear diplomacy, a linked challenge which we turned into an opportunity was the never-ending saga, which too continues till today, of layers upon layers of sanctions and denials imposed on Pakistan by the international actors with a clear intent of preventing the further development of Pakistan's nuclear program and squeezing it as much as possible. These sanctions and denials went to the extent of being ridiculous, indiscriminate, and often devoid of any logic in their application. The list of entities that were sanctioned fairly regularly sometimes included universities and private sector companies that were miles away from the nuclear program. The sordid story continues till today. Only last month, some more meaningless sanctions were imposed on a Pakistani entity. What was our response and standard policy? Very predictable and simple. Go indigenous. It took time, funding, and patience, but our scientists and engineers at the strategic organizations are professionally in a different class altogether. Committed and motivated professionals who love challenges. I do not recall a single project which we decided to develop indigenously and on which they did not deliver. The sanctions and denials invariably worked to our advantage by compelling us to become self-reliant. Amongst many other success stories of our times, indigenization of the nuclear infrastructure is one big one. And this is something which was not an SPD effort alone. The story goes back to the earliest days of the commencement of Pakistan's nuclear program. Both the eras that I have talked about, 52 odd years, cumulatively are replete with success stories of projects and facilities being developed locally when compelled by sanctions. Perhaps we owe a small vote of thanks to our detractors who inadvertently enabled SPD in its task of institution building in Pakistan's nuclear program. I shall now say a few words on policy measures undertaken. By 2011, a little over a decade since May 98, we had reached a point in our force development strategy when we felt confident enough to transit Pakistan's nuclear policy from credible minimum deterrence to full spectrum deterrence. During the period of this decade plus, with the development of a variety of ballistic missiles, the tactical nuclear weapon Nasr, together with a family of highly accurate low-flying cruise missiles, Babar and Rad, for a variety of land, air, sea, and undersea platforms, the long-range Shaheen-3 with a range of 2750 kilometers, the Ababil with a multiple independently targeting re-entry vehicle, the MIRV capability. By 2011, the entire spectrum of nuclear weapons was covered horizontally and vertically. India's vast eastern and southern geographical dimensions, including its outlying territories, were fully covered by Pakistan's various nuclear weapons. Today, alhamdulillah, Pakistan's full spectrum deterrence capability, while generally remaining within the larger philosophy of credible minimum deterrence, comprises horizontally of a robust tri-services inventory of a variety of nuclear weapons, a triad if you may. It is held on land with the Army Strategic Force Command, at sea with the Naval Strategic Force Command, and in the air with the Air Force Strategic Command. Vertically, the nuclear spectrum encapsulates progressively increasing destructive weapon yields and range coverage at three tiers: strategic, operational, and tactical, to cover India's vast eastern and southern geographical dimensions, including its outlying territories. Cumulatively, there is an awesome amount of deterrent nuclear power available to the NCSPD. It enables Pakistan to effectively deter aggression through smart deterrence strategies in the first and second strike modes. The capabilities enhance Pakistan's response options, both for peacetime and pre-war deterrence, and if ever deterrence is challenged by the adversary, for intra-war deterrence. The development strategy was designed to enable a powerful full-spectrum deterrence, and on that it has delivered. Specifically, the policy of full-spectrum deterrence implies the following: that Pakistan possesses the full spectrum of nuclear weapons in three categories: strategic, operational, and tactical, with full range coverage of the large Indian landmass and its outlying territories. There is no place for India's strategic weapons to hide. That Pakistan possesses a full range of weapons yield coverage and the numbers strongly secured to deter the adversary's policy of massive retaliation. Pakistan's counter-massive retaliation will therefore be as severe, if not more. And thirdly, that Pakistan retains the liberty of choosing from a full spectrum of targets in a target-rich India, notwithstanding the Indian BMD or the S-400, to include counter-value, counter-force, and battlefield targets. By developing full spectrum deterrence capability, we have reinforced deterrence at all levels, restored the disturbed strategic balance, thereby ensuring that peace will generally prevail. Cold start doctrine or proactive operations have not only been checked, but the operational options of the large Indian military have been severely curtailed to a point that now in 2024, 5 years since the last Indian humiliation at Balakot Rajouri in 2019, one hears about a dynamic response strategy being crafted by the Indian military planners in an effort to remain relevant, based essentially on the hackneyed strategic strikes formula at the tactical level, across the LOC, or even the international borders. In a matter of a few decades, that is a steep climb down. From General K. Sundarji's Blitzkrieg of 1986 to General V.P. Malik's Limited War 2001 and 2, and now to meaningless strategic strikes 2016 and 2019. In my opinion, the dynamic response strategy is a clear reflection of the limits and constraints imposed by Pakistan's robust nuclear capability on India's strategic and operational options, and therefore my preference to call Pakistan's strategic weapons, especially the tactical nuclear weapons, as weapons of peace. When seen against the reality of the gradual erosion and regression of India's politico-military options or choices in the real world of today's South Asian strategic balance, to me it sounds comical, perhaps quixotic, to hear India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh threatening that India will chase infiltrators inside Pakistani territory. and not to be left behind for the Foreign Minister Jaishankar to say that Pakistan's nuclear capability should be ignored while planning to take Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Such statements at the highest political levels can only fall in the category of political bluster, perhaps born out of the frustration of seeing one of the world's largest militaries standing deterred because of Pakistan's full-spectrum deterrence nuclear capability. My humble advice to them would be, by way of a memory recall, that Pakistan does not have a no first use policy. May I repeat for emphasis, Pakistan does not have a no first use policy. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir, for your comprehensive talk on post-1998 nuclear management in Pakistan. Now, the question-answer session will be moderated by Dr. Naeem Ahmed Salik. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm sure after such a comprehensive presentation by General Kidwai, there would be many questions. But we have limitation of time. We have about 15-20 minutes for the questions. So once again, I would like to repeat the earlier guidelines about asking questions. Please be brief and to the point in asking questions. No long comments and no multiple questions. Please ask one question at a time and identify yourself while you are asking the questions. Okay, Mr. Chris Clary here.
Thank you, General, for such an authoritative presentation. I think all of us learned a lot and have learned from you over the years. My question had to do with another aspect of the legacy of your years. I noted 3 years ago when Dr. A.Q. Khan died, the Prime Minister referred to him as a beloved national icon. The President gave thanks on behalf of a grateful nation for his service. The National Security Advisor said that he was a true hero of Pakistan. Not to say what their comments were wrong, especially it's understandable to say nice things about someone upon their passing. But I recall that a huge part of your tenure was cleaning up Dr. A.Q. Khan's mess, and I'm curious how you think about his legacy with the passage of time.
Thanks, Chris. First, I think I would not like to comment on what the President and the Prime Minister and the others might have said about Dr. A.Q. Khan. It will be wrong for me to comment on their statements. But one thing I can say is that they generally reflected the nation's feelings. I don't think the highest office holders of the country would be out of step with the nation's feelings. That is one. The other aspect that you mentioned is the proliferation, the negative aspects of it. Again, to that I will say, look at the world as a whole. Look at the world as a whole and not from 2004 only. You can go back to 1945 and talk of proliferation. There are long stories of proliferation across the world, across the globe. So if there was something that happened in this particular region and it happens across the border in India, it has happened. It has happened on the west side, on the western side of Pakistan, in Israel, and the way the Western countries have supported and the development of the Israeli weapons program. So there's a long stories of proliferation everywhere, all across the globe. So this was one that we, particularly Pakistanis, would not like to focus on it. Whatever happened, the government of the day dealt with the issue, and it dealt with the issue in a manner in which I think a comfortable solution was found, and the nation was generally satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai. I hope I'm audible now. Dr. Rubina Wasim from National University of Sciences and Technology. Sir, my question is regarding that fear of potential default, which we have. There are lots of news in the international media that is popping up on the impact it will create, the economic crisis will create on the nuclear safety and security. So my question is basically...
What will create the impact on nuclear security?
Economic crisis in Pakistan and its impact on nuclear safety and security. I would refer here to that NTI report which Dr. Adil Sultan was also referring, where Pakistan was ranked at the top 10. And obviously the last Grossi's visit, he also commented on the robust nuclear safety and security system. Yet, what would be your response regarding those economic crises and its impact on the nuclear safety and security? Thank you.
I think you're talking of today, 2024. What I talked of was in the last 26 years. And I made it very clear that Pakistan's focus, or SPD's and NCA's focus on nuclear security was among the biggest, not only challenges, but a very major priority area. I can only go by the results. As of today, Alhamdulillah, 26 years, including the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and the imbalance or the insecurity that has been created within Pakistan as a consequence of a number of international events. Nuclear security has not only been a top priority area, but the results are before you, that there has been no attempt whatsoever on Pakistan's nuclear security. And one reason for that is not for want of intent on the other side, perhaps. I think supported by the adversaries that these people are, they would have wanted some kind of a negative incident to happen in the domain of the nuclear security. But that it has not happened is a reflection of the quality of nuclear security on ground, conceptually, that has been installed. Your linkage with Pakistan's current economic situation it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing because while I did talk of priority budgets for nuclear security, that policy I think continues till today. I think nobody in the SPD can take chances with nuclear security. So whatever X amount of rupees that are given to SPD, there's a very good figure earmarked for nuclear security. And nuclear security, alhamdulillah, has been strengthened to a point where I'm sure today's the inputs in terms of money that you are talking economy are not as much as they were in the beginning where we were trying to make the initial investments. So I don't think the economic situation of the country, which in any case I believe is now probably it seems to be improving, I don't think that is an issue with nuclear security.
My name is Ghazala Jalil, and I'm from Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Sir, my question to you is about Indian nuclear and conventional build-up. India is furiously building up its military capabilities, including hypersonic weapons, increasingly sophisticated BMD systems, and MIRV capability, as well as there are hints that India is moving away from no first use and also considering a counter-force strategy against Pakistan. In view of all these developments, what kind of response, or do you see any change in Pakistan's doctrine or response?
If you're talking about the change of doctrines or policy in the nuclear domain, or if you are talking about the change of doctrines and policy in the conventional domain, India has of course been developing. It is not a new story. India has been developing forces moving forward from 1947 onwards. And on each occasion, Pakistan has not been found wanting in developing a response, politically first, and followed by militarily second, and within militarily, conventional, and from 1972 onwards, let's say, in the nuclear domain. So Pakistan and Pakistani planners, they have found solutions to everything that India has brought up its sleeve. So you can rest assured that the developments which are taking place now, enhancement in various technologies and investments in various technologies in the three services in the nuclear domain, the Pakistani planners are quite aware of that, and we will continue to take the minimum safeguards that are required in an integrated nuclear military strategy. I can assure you on that you have some very top professionals sitting in the SPD and in the conventional forces whose job is nothing else except to evaluate threat and find responses.
Sir, thank you very much, Dr. Adil from Air University. As always, your presentations are very insightful, and personally I learn a lot from your takes on how Pakistan views its nuclear policy. You talked about the horizontal and vertical domains of full spectrum deterrence, but the way India is moving to space, that's the another dimension. In your perception, how you see this threat for nuclear deterrence, and if you can share, I'm sure people at SPD must be taking that into consideration, but if you can share anything about how Pakistan should approach this fourth dimension of space, because India is building anti-satellite weapons and other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil, for your first two lines of compliments. As a professional, you would know what I told the lady just now, that threat evaluation invites response. This is a basic fundamental that you and I have learned from the earliest days. Whether it's a platoon level, company level, battalion level, Air Force, whichever level, wing, squadron, etc. Threat hogi, response aega. Sahi hai? Having said that basic fundamental, if there's a threat developing in the area of space, people here who manage these space responses will not be found sleeping. This is despite the fact that the Pakistani space program has lagged behind. We all know that. Indian space program took a very early lead and maintained, all credit to them, they maintained a direction, and today they are pretty much ahead in the space programs. But then you also have to evaluate whether you are into an unfettered arms race. Is that something that Pakistan should be looking at? Economic situation, somebody said. So given the kind of situation, given the threat, economic situation, etc., minimum safeguards is the key word. Response to a threat is the key word. And that is something that Pakistan continues to take. And space program today, alhamdulillah, after it came into the SPD fold sometime in the earliest 2000 or something, 2001, I think the space program per se has made good progress and will continue to make good progress. There is a Space Vision 2047, which everybody in the SPD, I'm sure, is trying to follow as best as they can. Now, specifically, somebody asked me the other day, not in this house, that they are making anti-satellite weapons. At this point in time, or you can perhaps look at in the future, anti-satellite at this point in time perhaps does not affect Pakistan. Those who have satellites up there should be worried. Most of all the P5 who have these satellites. Pakistan has a very limited program in space, and that limited space program will be oriented towards communications and towards remote sensing by and large. Weaponization, like anti-satellite program, etc., Zamir Saab will bear you out. You are well informed. There is something called PAROS at the CD. And I think PAROS is something which will always find walls, barriers to prevent that kind of a thing happening. If it doesn't happen, in any case, like I said, if the threat becomes serious, I think the Pakistani planners will respond seriously.
So thank you very much. I'm Anam Khan, Associate Director Research at Center for International Strategic Studies, Islamabad. So my question is about the sole purpose nuclear doctrine. There was a debate during Biden's presidential campaign in the past about US adapting sole purpose nuclear doctrine. But the sole purpose nuclear doctrine, where the idea is to show why a state possesses nuclear weapons. So can Pakistan analyze the factors, because any nuclear weapon state can have its own sole purpose nuclear doctrine considering the contours they want to have of why they possess the weapon. So wouldn't it be better for Pakistan to also look into the sole purpose nuclear doctrine, or even India?
May I remind you that the sole purpose of Pakistan's nuclear program, the reason for Pakistan's nuclear program, post-1971, was South Asia, trying to impose or trying to find a means of restoring strategic balance. The criticality of the Pokhara 1 combined with the earlier 1971 in East Pakistan, these two were catalysts for Pakistan nuclear program, so that kind of an aggression, 65, 71, becomes a closed window, no more aggression by India of that magnitude. So Pakistan's nuclear program is focused entirely on South Asia to maintain strategic balance, and specifically, of course, India. This is a stated policy, whether it is credible minimum deterrence, whether it's a full spectrum deterrence. Within the fold of these two concepts lies the key to Pakistan's responses in the nuclear domain. What you're talking about is, of course, something which is hi-fi. And the Americans and the Russians, and for that matter, the responding other Chinese sometimes, they have their own threat compulsions, and therefore their own response compulsions. Some of those, at a very, very small scale, may be applicable to South Asia in terms of the philosophy of the concept, but the scale, no. So if and when, I think, India gets into a position where we feel that the nuclear stability is getting disturbed, the strategic stability is getting disturbed. As of now, I don't think that is the issue. And even in the foreseeable future. Like I said, they're top professionals, and you're rest assured in SPD and in the conventional forces and GS headquarters, who have no other job except to keep an eye on developments in what is happening in India. And therefore, as and when a certain concept, I have listed 3-4 of them before you, if it becomes by way of a major threat or an upcoming threat in a 5 years, 10 years time frame, I'm sure these professionals will find a solution to that. That I can assure this House, that response options will never allow India to disturb the strategic balance to Pakistan's disadvantage.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, it has been a privilege and honor being part of your team, erstwhile. So there is a lot of happening going on in the Indian Ocean with the Indian buildup of nuclear submarines. They have recently added the second nuclear submarine, INS Aridman. And there are a lot many which are on the line coming up with new technologies and new systems. While NSFC has been operationalized quite a while ago, not much has been put out about the development in that domain. Would you like to throw some light on that aspect, please?
I think we are all aware of where the Indian third part of the triad, the Indian Navy, strategic goals in the Indian Ocean, and perhaps even beyond in Asia-Pacific areas. and these submarines, etc., that are coming up. I'll simply bring you back to what I've been saying to 3 or 4 questions. Response options हमारे क्या होने चाहिए to a certain development. Pakistan's basic mission given to these services is to defend the territorial integrity of Pakistan and perhaps end the war, a future war, on a favorable note. And in that context, the 2 services which are responsible for looking at the Indian Ocean, leading service being the Navy, and supported by the Air Force. The Pakistani Navy has a certain mission, and they will stay within that mission. And that mission is to secure Pakistan's locks, strategic lines of communications, and to ensure the flow of trade, oil, etc., etc. And linked with it, to secure or defend Pakistani ports. Pakistan Navy at no stage has been given the mission of reaching out to Maldives and to Seychelles and to Diego Garcia and Mauritius, whatever, Indian Ocean. Because force development strategy flows out of the mission. The day it is given a mission to go out into the Indian Ocean, somebody will give it the money also to go out to the Indian Ocean. So as long as the mission of the Pakistani Navy remains being what it is, which is realistic, minimal for the security of Pakistan, the Pakistan Navy cannot go beyond that unless you change your larger national policy. As far as these developments are concerned, I said, and you also said, everybody seems to be in harmony with that, that a working second strike capability exists with Pakistan. And what do you need it for? Deterrence. To deter a capability of the Indian Navy to hurt Pakistan. As long as this is there, it complements the first strike capability, this limited second strike capability. Because that limited second strike capability ensures that all this armada that is being built up will have operational plans which will not be detrimental to Pakistan. Because if they do, then there is a response available. So if I don't know whether I'm able to explain to you correctly or not, with the existence of a capability with these 2 services, including in the nuclear domain with the NSFC, I don't see any reason why the Indian build-up, because they've been given a different mission. Their mission is to be in sync with Quad, with AUKUS, the rest of it. They're being dragged into these, and they're, I think, happily being dragged into this, and therefore building up the kind of naval forces which will help them maybe against China and carrying out missions which are way beyond Pakistan's security concerns. So I would say that full spectrum deterrence, in which the NSFC and the Air Force have a good role to play in securing Pakistan's various security interests, as long as that stays with Pakistan and you have a strong capability to retaliate, in other words, deter, I think we're okay. We don't need to get into that kind of I said the same thing in terms of space. I'm saying the same thing in terms of the expanding Indian Navy. They are playing according to their mission, and we should play according to our mission.
Thank you so much, sir, for your great talk. Whilst hearing you, it made me realize how lucky we are to have the likes of you and Sir Salek being present, and we can hear you in person. I think the future generations will only envy us. May Allah give you both good health and long lives with happiness, sir. My question relates to history. You talked about the development of NCA, and we had the Army Strategic Force Command, the Naval and the Air Strategic Force Command, preceding the development of the likes of Rad and Nasr 3. So I just wanted to ask you, whilst you were in the conception phase, what made you realize that will there be a need for a triad, or in case there is a need for a triad, you would have the organizational in place for that? Thank you.
Way back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Triad was something that is, I think, countries which have developed nuclear forces, I think the standard format is having a triad, because having a first strike capability is one thing, very good. You have it on with the land-based systems, you have it with the air-based systems. Some of it is inbuilt in a second strike into the surviving forces of these two services or strategic forces. But a second strike capability, we all know, comes from the strategic naval forces. And therefore, since it's he's a very learned man, I am not a learned man. He's done his PhDs and things and theorists. I have been a practical practitioner based on common sense. And common sense, reading materials and seeing what the world was doing was very simple. It made sense to have a second strike and a first strike capability. And therefore, from the very first day when we thought that yes, at some point in time there had to be a second strike capability. And then, of course, God helped us along the way as we found various solutions in terms of communications, in terms of a weapon, in terms of a platform, etc. These were the 2 or 3 essentials to have a workable asset second strike capability. So I think from day one, this was something which was inbuilt into the concept of raising of the 3 strategic forces.
With this, we conclude this special session, leaving us with invaluable insights. I would now request Dr. Naeem Ahmed Salek to present the conference memento to our esteemed speaker, Lieutenant General Khalid Ahmed Kidwai. I would now request Team SVI and speakers to join us on stage for a group photo.